Before I begin this review, I want to make sure that you guys know that this key was obtained via evolve.pr via the developer. Keep that in mind as it won't affect the review in any way, but it's good to know. Genres are a staple of the entertainment industry. They set up certain expectations for the audience, where they can feel safe in terms of certain key elements being part of the story, and what to hopefully expect out of the film. Looking to keep your attention and looking for a visual experience? Probably want to go see an action flick. Want sap, and more sap? Go see a romantic comedy. Want to be possibly scared but most likely wonder why you're exactly watching the movie in the first place? Go see a B-rated horror film. And video games are not any different in those same senses, but it has a little bit of a different story there because it has the interactivity element. There's definitely a whole nother layer of expectation when going into a game. Genres may go a little bit deeper than a basic definition because all the types of games are out there. Take RPGs for example. You have your Japanese RPGs, your tactical RPGs, and your action RPGs. But sometimes a game challenges elements within its genre that you wouldn't expect, challenging expectations of its audience and taking things in a whole different direction. It may be a genre in name, but it most certainly plays differently. And in the realm of action-based RPGs, Victor Vran, yeah, I probably pronounced that wrong, give me a break, challenges the typical model and construction of the games of its genre at the price of $20. The game was in early access for a couple of months, but now it's finally come out, and can be really looked at with a fine-tooth comb. Does Victor Vran push the limits of his genre and create something completely unexpected? Or does it try to do too much and become too different for its own good, losing out in quality in the process? Let's find out. Now, in normal RPGs of this type, you would end up taking a specialization that you would lock in early on in the game. You'd become a sorceress, an Amazon, or a warrior. But that's not the case in Victor Vran. You've got no traditional skills or RPG points that you put into skills like the traditional case. You create your arsenal through your tools, your weaponry, your clothes, your demon powers, and your destiny cards. Now let's start off with the biggest difference in this game, the weaponry. The game is unlike any other in the genre that I have played, because the weapons play so differently. Now look, other games have differences in weapons of course, don't get me wrong, but it's usually in the stats portion, attack power and speed for example. The fact of the matter is the weapons don't feel that much different in the end, you're just smacking people or using melee or ranged attacks. But that's not the case here. You've got a unique selection of weapons to choose from here, and honestly, I love the changes from the guys at Haemimont Games, as it makes it stand out from almost every other game in the genre in this sense. You see, that's the game's interesting element about the 7 different weapon types in their situational uses, and how one weapon, one set of skills, is not going to get you through the game, especially on hard mode. You may develop a favorite weapon for example, like a rapier, but if you try to use it in the wrong situation, you're going to be in a world of hurt, and that's what I love about this game. Let's see if you're dealing with a large enemy with a large amount of armor on him. You'll probably want to go with the rapier as I said, which can pierce that armor with a flurry of attacks and the ability to inflict a bleed on the opponent. But that same rapier will get overwhelmed with the horde of enemies because it's so focused on one, and so you'll need to switch it out for something else, like maybe a nice little lightning gun. It can chain on enemies, and is great for dealing with groups. But against champion enemies, with a bit more health and the ability to throw magic your way, it just doesn't have the power to deal with them in a reasonable fashion. Maybe a sword and its ability to daze, aka stun, that enemy is the best option in that case. It's sort of a cyclic pattern. There's always a good weapon for a situation, but it's not always obvious exactly what that weapon is necessarily. Now, you've got 2 different weapons at any time you can have, so you can switch with a middle mouse click. In addition, each weapon comes with a set of 2 abilities on the Q and E buttons that sort of define the weapon as a whole. Depending on the weapon, you may be able to daze or stun an enemy, dash across the arena in an attack, or hit for a devastating attack using a charged up ability. Each weapon plays a lot differently because of this. These skills do have a cooldown to them that can be refreshed with certain criteria being reached. In fact, some weapons have a unique mechanic altogether, like the soul shards with the scythe, which are gotten from successful hits and are spent when using your abilities, being more effective when more souls are disposed. But that's not all in terms of customizing your character. You can further optimize your ability with destiny cards. These give you buffs of various sorts. They may give you health upon kill, to being specific to the weapon that you are currently using. There's a wide range of abilities here and powers, and you can get to a very specific build by using the right combination of cards. Armor gives you specific abilities and traits, as well as giving your character a little bit of a unique flair to him. Now, you could build a crit monster in terms of being able to damage things over and over again with critical damage, or you could go the armor route, taking all the armor that you could put in and trying to defend yourself. There's a lot of ways to build your character, and I do like that. You also have demon powers. You'll unlock 2 slots by the time you're done, and they come in a variety of forms. You can use a blast of power from the sun and just shoot a Kamehameha waves at your enemy, or the ability to gain health through an aura when attacking. They use a bar called overdrive, which is gotten through a variety of ways, depending on the armor you're wearing. Most of the time it's related to attacks though, but there are other ways of getting it. Okay, I've said a lot about the combat options, but is the combat fun? Yes, it's pretty rock solid with the different combinations available and what the game throws at you. Now each area has 5 main objectives to complete. Some of them are straightforward, while others are not so much. There are ones with limitations, with time limits, or the powers that you can use against enemies, for example. And failure to comply with these restrictions will lead to, well, failure. You can restart the location to re-attempt these objectives at any time, so it's not like you lose that for the entire run. Now, I played through the game on hard mode, but I did play on the normal mode during the early access period. The different locations and situations that you're put into will make it a challenge for you. And unlike other games of the genre, these enemies reasonably scale with you. Each fight in combat makes it feel like a real challenge, which I really appreciate. These aren't just hordes of enemies that you're getting through, even though it may feel like it in the end. You have to dodge around, attempting to recover your health when you're getting majorly hit, as you look for that last cooldown on a potion to come, or waiting to get your read for the next big onslaught of moves. These enemies can be strong as you at times, and especially if you're not careful, you could back yourself into a corner and just get annihilated. And what I particularly like about combat is the fact that you really have to watch out for combat and adjust to the battlefield. You see, certain combinations of enemies can be really problematic for a certain type of character, and dealing with these enemies on the fly can be pretty exhilarating, also tiring at the same time. And here's the weird thing about it. The necessity to change all the elements over time in terms of your weaponry and your abilities sort of keep the game fresh, at least at the hard difficulty. Sure, you could attempt to power yourself through the game using a melee and ranged attack combo, but sooner or later, you'll run into an enemy type or a combination of enemy types that will stop you dead in your tracks. You really have to think about your combat situations in this game, and I actually really enjoy that. I like a thinking man's game. Now, on the flip side of that, there is one flaw that develops with combat over time, and that has to do with the enemy types. Now, like I said before, specific enemy combinations and enemy types can keep the game feeling fresh over time. But the thing is that the little twists of the enemies here and there, like the exploding spiders for example, are great, but sooner or later, the twists just stop working. Unfortunately, you'll be wishing for something else to come take their place, or really anything to come take their place because you want to see something different. Personally, I think the person who developed this game, or the people who developed this game, have arachnophobia because it's clear with the amount of spiders that you deal with in the game. Now for bosses, all the fights have unique mechanics, and definitely some of them stand out as interesting elements in terms of the fight. Like dealing with a whole room of eggs and spiders, and you having to deal with the eggs hatching left and right while dealing with the big boss. Or another spider boss where you have to take pillars down to knock a spider off the ceiling. I really wish there wasn't 2 spider bosses, but the whole arachnophobia thing. Or a ghost that you have to chase through corridors while dodging other enemies. Each fight feels relatively unique, and it works on a lot of levels. As for difficulty, the game does the right balance for the normal mode, and allows for a real challenge on the hard difficulties. As in, for the hard difficulties, prepare to die. A lot. A lot. Part of the thing here is the fact that sometimes an enemy will just get a good crit on you, and you'll go down pretty darn hard. But part of it is the activation of all the hexes that are optional to some extent in the normal mode. These hexes give various buffs to enemies of various kinds, from making champion kinds of enemies to dealing damage to you every so often. Now here's the thing, in the normal mode you can turn these on and off, and sometimes you'll need to turn them on for the optional side missions that come up, because they sort of require it. But for the hard mode, they're always turned on, and that can be problematic in certain areas, as you'll get your butt handed to you over, and over, and over again. This one particular sequence you're seeing, it actually caused me to ask for help in the discussion forums, a rarity for me. I tried hundreds of things, and I ended up having to farm a pretty powerful shield power-up that didn't drop normally, for me at least, in order to do it. Sometimes the game can feel pretty relentless in its difficulty, especially because of the long treks that you'll have to make to get back to where you were on several of those battles. And some of the optional objectives when it comes to the hard mode just feel really punishing. Again, with some of the demon powers and the inability to use potions on them, it's actually better to actually die repeatedly in order to actually do it at times, because it doesn't actually reset that objective. Keep that in mind if you plan on playing this game. Now, one thing I do like that they added is the ability to, well, jump. The ability to actually skip sections at times in terms of being able to move across the map was nice, and while it took a while to get used to due to the isometric view, finding hidden sections via wall jumping was always fun, and was worth exploring the map more and more with. The game's story, though, may be its biggest disappointment in the end, as the overall narrative is bare bones, and doesn't have the interest or the lore in the writing or elements like a game like Torchlight 2 or Diablo has. Again, you're probably not here for the story in most cases, but they do set up some interesting elements in the world, about Victor and about the hunters and the monsters that the world is being overtaken by, and there are some good set pieces. It's really just the vessel to get gameplay through, however. It could have been worse, I guess, but it could have also been a lot better, and I really wish that this would have been enhanced a little bit more. Victor Vran's a little past and the world that was created, I felt like it could have been a lot different. Although I will say one thing about this game, it does not falter on the game's production value and life that it breathes in with two specific elements, the environments and the voice. The environments have a lot of details that you can take in if you keep your eye out for them, with little details like the spider's cave and the helpless victims wrangling back and forth, attempting to get free from their webs. That tells a story in itself, and those little touches add a nice little element to the game. As for the music, it didn't really necessarily stand out to me in any form, but it also didn't necessarily stand out in a bad way either. But it's the snarky and witty narrator-like figure known as the voice that really shines. He does more than narrate though, he can interact with you, like leading you to areas with dropping treasure for you to follow, or reacting to what you are doing in-game and either making fun of it or playing with your emotions more. I frankly think that this kind of storytelling and world building has been vastly underutilized by developers, with games such as Bastion showing a full range of abilities for the interactivity of these type of games. The voice is the highlight of the story and presentation here, and stands above everything else. Here's a couple examples for you.
Those frozen soldiers, they look so chic. I tell you, Victor, someone here has a taste for modern art. Take care to get frozen in a more dynamic pose when you die, would you? Careful. Those monsters may be too tough for you. Let me. That wasn't fair to you, Victor. You are a big, strong hunter with such a fabulous hat. You could have taken those by yourself. Brave Sir Victor ran away, bravely ran away, away. When danger reared its ugly head, he bravely turned his tail and fled. Bravest of the brave, Sir Victor.
When games attempt to do something completely different, they can attempt to do way too much and completely fall flat while doing it. But that's not the case with Victor Vran, not at all. This is impressive. To work within the bounds of the genre and rework several mechanics at its core and still feel like the game is still a part of the genre, that takes a lot of design work, that takes a lot of dedication, and I really have to give it to the developers to making an experience that may be able to draw in new fans, but also keep the old fans a little bit interested. Now, this isn't a loot collection marathon like you would see with it like Torchlight 2 or Diablo. That is the one thing you have to keep in mind with this. If you're looking for a loot game, this is not it. While the weapons are different, you don't have that big of difference between weapons. In fact, it's actually somewhat confusing at times whether or not one weapon is better than the other. In fact, it seems like it's situational, and that's the point. It is situational. Sometimes a specific sword is better against skeletons. Sometimes a specific enemy is going to go down to a specific weapon type, and that's the point. They didn't make it about the loot. Now, one of the big complaints that I've heard was the fact that the game is short. I'm just going to let this screen tell you exactly what I think about that. Now look, I am playing on hard mode, and I did do sections over and over again. But this isn't like the big narrative in terms of something like Diablo 3 or the vast nature of Torchlight 2. This is something where each individual encounter is really special, at least in my opinion. Sure, you're going to have a lot of skeletons that you're going to defeat. You're going to have a lot of spiders you're going to defeat. But the combinations do feel fresh after a while. The fact of the matter is that you'll get different combinations and you'll get overrun at times. And you'll have to switch up and change your strategy. Its focus on the combat is exactly what I like about this game. In the end, I give Victor Vran an 8.5 out of 10. The unique design and the uniqueness of Victor Vran is its appeal here, and while it does have some faults with its storytelling and a little bit of the repetitive nature of combat after a while, you do sort of expect that from the genre. But that's the thing about this genre. The thing is, with this game in particular, it feels fresh, it feels different from everything else, and its focus on combat and its focus on those elements within combat is something I really appreciated. The fact of the matter is, you had to change your strategies, and I love that about this game. An 8.5, pretty reasonable for 20 bucks. Alright, this is Dragnix signing out, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Again, like always, I will put my links to the review in terms of the written part of the review in the description below. It always helps if you upvote it or downvote it in the case of if you did not like this review, for the Steam review as well as the Metacritic review. For full reviews, I will make sure that Metacritic is included for the games that I can actually do on that portion. It does help give the video a little bit more visibility to everybody else, and again, I am trying to make a career of this, while still being truthful and still keeping you guys informed of the good games that are coming onto the market. Alright, have a great day, and I will see you all later. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left hand side as well. And if you missed my last video, take a look at the right hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.